Welcome to the Surrogacy Warrior Podcast with your host, Kimberly Surratt. Join us as we dive deep into the heart of surrogacy, offering insights, sharing stories, and providing advice. Our mission is to illuminate every corner of surrogacy, from the emotional roller coasters and legal battles to the triumphant moments of birth and beyond. Surrogacy Warrior is more than just a podcast. It's a community for anyone touched by or interested in the transformative power of surrogacy. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, lawyersforfamilies.com. Now here's the host of Surrogacy Warrior, Kimberly Surratt.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Surrogacy Warrior. This is the podcast where we navigate the incredible journey of surrogacy and assisted reproduction, anything that helps create families. I'm Kim Surratt. I'm your host. I'm an attorney licensed in both Nevada and California. I'm a passionate advocate and do a lot of lobbying for creating families through these remarkable paths. Today, we're talking to Sofia Perez, who is in Mexico City. And Sofia, tell us about yourself, and thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Kim. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. My name is Sofia Perez, and I'm a Mexican attorney. I'm the director of 𝐒𝐮𝐫𝐫𝐢𝐨𝐫 Abogados. It's a Mexican law firm specialized in international family law and reproduction-assisted matters. So this is me, and thank you so much for this space.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, my friend, you and I know that the number of surrogacies between the United States and Mexico are just increasing dramatically. I mean, large numbers, and my phone calls are coming in constantly. So, and I know you and I end up sending a lot of cases to you that are what I call cases that need to be fixed, that have had some problems. And you and I both know not all surrogacy in Mexico is bad. There is some really good surrogacy in Mexico. So I know you and I wanted to sit and talk and get some information out to the public about how to avoid the bad ones, how to avoid some of these companies that are doing things not necessarily the right way. But I mean, generally, tell me, reinforce what I said. Tell the world there's good surrogacy in Mexico. There's a right way to do it, right?
Yes. I think that first we need to talk about why the things could be so different between one company and the other one. And the thing is, our law gives us principles to do surrogacy, but the vision is completely resolved in a private way. So the vision of how help families to create a relationship with the gestational carrier and how to mitigate risk and what risk we may face during the journey, it will be, the vision of each agency will be completely different based on their experience, based on their values and principles. And so considering that, the first thing that families should consider are, first, if they will have the option to know the gestational carrier, if there will be open communication between them. The second thing is if they will have independent legal counsel between the agency and between parties. And also if they have to corroborate if it's an agency, what are the clinics that they are working with, and if that clinics have the permissions to operate. probably you don't have to do the preliminary due diligence to know if they are operating, because you presume that they have the license to operate. But it will be good to ask if the agency already asked them or already made that due diligence to make sure that they have the license and authorizations to operate in Mexico legally.
So just operate, but there's no licensing in Mexico for them to do surrogacy specifically, right? Just for them to
No,
operate as a clinic.
exactly.
Right. So, I mean, everything you've said so far, it's funny because a lot of Americans get worried and stressed about going to Mexico, but all of the same problems exist in the United States, right? We have good companies and bad companies. We have no regulation over those companies and how they operate, same as what you just said. The vision is different for every agency. Even if we have laws that support us that say you can do surrogacy, it doesn't mean that the agencies are being regulated themselves. But that's an interesting point. We do make a lot of assumptions often in surrogacy, whether it's in the US or in Mexico or in Colombia, that because they are a medical clinic and they look like one, we assume they have the right to operate as one, and we should check, right?
And well, and well, in fact, not all clinics have all the license that they have to do the to provide the services that they are offering to the family. So this is so important. Um, Also to understand who will be the health responsible of the clinic, just in case that something is, well, if they commit negligence, for example. And another important thing is, before deciding moving forward, is, well, if there's a problem, how do they fix that problem? How do they resolve the problem? Because if the agency is telling you that everything is perfect, everything it's you
And
will have
guaranteed.
a dream journey,
Right.
uh, that it's not true, because to pursue a surrogacy journey is not easy, and you have to know the bad experience as well, to make sure, well, to understand how they navigate, what is the way that they face that problems and overcome the problems, because we are humans, we are learning, we are trying to improve our practices, but the key question is how we overcome the obstacles, and how we, talking about the agencies, how do they help families to overcome the obstacles between the parties, for example.
Right.
And what will be the values that will determine the way of resolving problems.
Right. So on those problems, a lot of times you'll see problems where, or you'll see where an agency will argue that the reason the intended parents do not meet the surrogate is to make sure there's no problems, right? And I see this mostly in Mexico. In the United States, you always meet your surrogates. It's really not, there's very, very few that are otherwise. But in Mexico, I see this often, and that's probably one of the biggest stark differences. And you had mentioned it in your points about, meeting the surrogate and getting to know who she is. And I think when I take companies from Mexico, that's the first category I put them in. Do they meet them or do they not meet them? But why do you think it's important? I know why I think it's important that they meet the surrogate, but
Well, first I will tell you the reason that I know that they of doing that,
Mhm.
and they argue that the reason of not having an open communication between parties is because they are preventing fraud. And to be honest, it's ridiculous to think that, because this is a, hu- uh, this process, through this process humans are helping other humans, and they have to know each other to understand that the gestational carrier will set in risk her life, will pause her life in for a period of time, and she will sacrifice a lot of things to help them. And also the gestational carriers should understand why they are pursuing surrogacy, what is their story, to create bonding and compassion, etc. So this argument to um, avoid this connection between parties, this will is not valid for me.
Right.
Now, uh, eh, well,
Well, what do your judges in Mexico think when there's cases where they haven't met each other and they didn't know each
well,
other?
the thing is, they met each other, but once the pregnancy is confirmed
Right.
and
Okay.
has 12 weeks, and the carrier has 12 weeks of the pregnancy. So this is the court will, um, if you explain that to the court will could determine that this is a kind of abuse,
Right.
because this is a kind of abuse because one of the elements of granting their informed consent before entering to a surrogacy agreement is to have and all the information that you need to make informed decisions. And one of the basic information that you need is to know who
Who you're
will be
working with.
the family that you will help. Exactly. So and so this is not only a good practice, this is mandatory for avoiding abuses, and this is mandatory to help people to make informed decisions.
Right. I think some families, it's appealing to them at first, right? The thought of, well, what if she doesn't get pregnant and I become attached to her, or I get too invested in the process. And so I think for some people at first, it might not sound like a bad idea until people like you and I sit there and talk to people and say, hey, how do you know she's one, a real human being? How do you know they actually have a surrogate for you? They could be lying. How do you know she's not in a warehouse locked up against her will? How do you know they're not, that they're actually giving her the money that they say they're giving her, that you are paying for her to receive? And these are the problems we see where the women don't always receive the money. They may not be, kind of a, I'm trying not to use colloquial American terms, but what we call a bait and switch, which is you think you're working with one person when you're really working with another person. But this is how you avoid human rights violations. This is how you avoid trafficking. This is how you avoid abuse of a woman. Um, all really good points.
Yes, and well, part of the agencies should promote that parties grant their informed consent by helping the legal team to make a preliminary due diligence to mitigate risk during the process. So part of that due diligence allow us to understand the social conditions of both parties, the psychological conditions of both parties, the medical conditions, even of both parties in case of straight couples. Um, or single mothers. But the thing is, that information allows us to address that concerns and to making sure that the gestational carrier won't do this because she needs the money, because there is a line that between I will do this because I need to survive, between I need and I will do this because I want to improve my quality of life.
Right.
And this and if the agencies and the legal team that is involved in the process couldn't distinguish between between those scenarios, the informed consent won't be valid, and the result of that will be that the court says that she suffered abuse.
Right.
And it's not it's not I mean, it's this element is
Not optional.
it's not optional. Exactly, it's not optional.
Yeah. Okay. And you brought up another point that we kind of skipped over, which was about independent legal counsel, which in the United States, and we're just kind of cross comparing a little bit just because of what people are used to seeing. And for some reason, when they look at companies in Mexico, they know that like the standard in the United States is independent legal counsel for both the surrogate and the intended parents, separate from the agency. And yet when they look at companies in Mexico, for some reason, they just forget to apply all the same rules, and they should apply the same rules. There's no reason not to. And you brought that up. I do see a big difference between the different companies in Mexico with that. But there's not a legal requirement for the independent lawyers in Mexico, right? It's different.
Well, this year, the Supreme Court issued a ruling where, and the conclusion was that the gestational carrier suffered abuse because she didn't have independent.
Good. I like this Supreme Court decision. Good. Okay.
And that precedent, even it's not mandatory, but it's it's a precedent that all judges are taking into consideration now. So if even that case was horrible, it is a good example about what we should avoid.
Right.
So if an agency is listening to this, or a lawyer is listening to this, if you don't promote independent legal counsel, you run the risk of having a final ruling telling you that the gestational carrier, the informed consent of the gestational carrier of the intended parents
Was invalid.
invalid, exactly, and in consequence, that is kind of abuse.
So if they find that it is abuse, does that mean that the intended parents are not the parents of the child, or what happens in those cases?
Yes, in that case, the court says that, but the court said that it was a couple. The father has a genetic link with the baby, and the court couldn't refuse or deny that situation.
Right. So he's still a parent.
Exactly. But the intended mother, she wanted to get the filiation based on the procreational intention. And as the procreational intention, and as in this case were abused, the court says that the way of repairing damages, the intended mother should pursue an adoption process. And my vision is because the court was looking for another legal way to give to the gestational carrier an opportunity to grant a consent in a valid way.
Right. Well, because at the end of the day, a lot of that was the problem came from the agency. Not, I
Exactly.
mean, right. The surrogate thought things were being done right, I assume. Whether she may have even asked for a lawyer, who knows, but we don't know what she did. But it's hard to punish a surrogate with parentage for something that was not her intent or goal, right?
Exactly. And well, another thing that it's important is that, okay, this is part of this responsibility is from the legal team. But the thing is, in I've seen in Mexico City that the agencies, they want to provide a full service. They want to make the coordination. I mean, they want to coordinate the process, but they also want to provide the medical services, and they also want to have an in-house lawyer, and they cannot do um, everything. We need to have people specialize in their field to provide services with quality. And I think that this is one big mistake.
Yeah. Well, I think part of looking at companies in Mexico is when they're doing it for a cheaper process, right? But here's the reality. There is a point of being too cheap. And part of the reason they're offering these comprehensive packages is trying to keep the costs down. Because if they control everything right, they can keep the cost down. I can appreciate that to a certain degree for certain parts of it. Um, and I appreciate trying to keep the costs down, but you need to invest in certain things. And there are certain things that it should cost more. And just because it's Mexico doesn't mean it should be bottom price. That's not what this is about. You have some extremely talented doctors and extremely talented clinics and some great agencies that do it right, but they might have a slightly higher price tag. And you should be willing to pay it so that you can avoid these problems, because that adoption is not easy to accomplish. No.
No, and to be honest, in this case that the Supreme Court resolved, it for me it will be a huge problem because the gestation carrier now is not the mother because she doesn't appear on the birth certificate, but the birth certificate has a marginal note that says that the baby born through surrogacy, and the only way to eliminate that marginal note is to pursue an adoption process to mm, mm, to make sure that the gestational carrier will grant her informed consent about the process, and after that the intended mother will be recognized as a mother. But the thing is how you can pursue an adoption process if you're not the mother. I
Right.
mean, there is another legal obstacles to have successful in the adoption process, and I mean, and everything start with
To do
um,
sunlight move because of the sun.
everything started with a bad due diligence, with um, to try to save money with a and to join in one agency all the specialists that should be involved, and obviously that is reflected in the quality of service that they receive and the result that now this family and the carrier has they have a big issue. And of course, the baby, because her birth certificate now has a marginal note that reflect her origin, and for me, it's not fair for her as well.
Right. So, well, and they save the money on not having independent lawyers at the beginning to just spend money on lawyers to go all the way through the Supreme Court, and now through the very problematic process of potentially an adoption if they can get it done, right?
Yes.
And these are these cases where shortcuts are taken. I mean, I hear it often from different agencies in Mexico. I hear it through my clients. I don't hear it directly from the agencies, I'll be clear. But the agencies just tell them, well, just get an adoption. That'll fix everything. We'll put the surrogate on the birth certificate and we'll fix it with an adoption. One, international adoptions are not simple at all, right? And two, that's not always an option. It's not always a valid legal option for people. The cases I'm talking about that are really problematic is where the agency and the clinic and everybody was one, and they allowed the U.S. intended parents to use embryo donations or use, so that there's no genetic link to the intended parent out of the United States. And
without considering the legal consequence of not having a genetic link for U.S.
for the U.S., because that's a citizenship requirement for us. For some countries that can work. For the United States, that's not going to work. We
Exactly.
can't.
So the point is, if the agency is advising you to leave the surrogate on the birth certificate, well, you must run.
Exactly. That's number one. Absolutely not necessary in Mexico. And anybody that tells you to do that is
Yes, and
just money. Right.
there are some French families that they are receiving that counsel. You have to leave the surrogate on the birth certificate, and then you can remove her. And this is not true. This is not true. And then, well, a lot of families are doing this because they will be able to go back home in 1 or 2 weeks after the birth. But what they don't know, and what the agency is not telling them, is that the how many problems they will have in the future for doing that, for taking the easy pathway.
Right. Well, and they'll say to me, well, we'll just remove her later. You can't just do that. It doesn't work that way. And two, so what are the consequences? This is a good conversation for people that are listening about, if you leave that surrogate on the birth certificate and think your child's life is going to be easy, having a stranger in another country be their other parent on their birth certificate, just stop and think how many times in your life you had to have both parents' permission to do something. Passports, updates on your passports as a child. Medical decisions, enrolling in school. I mean, you can't just do it with just one parent most of the time. And what if the surrogate shows up and says, wait a minute, you're my child, because she's still on your birth certificate?
And here there is an international child abduction.
Yeah, exactly.
This is another risk. And another important thing is in Mexico, too, if you recognize a baby that is not yours, this is a crime against filiation.
Oh, that's interesting. So a surrogate who knows the child's not hers because she acted as a surrogate, legally acted as a surrogate, who says she is a parent to be put on that birth certificate, it's a criminal act, is what you're saying.
It's a criminal act, exactly. And of course, the way of prosecute that crime could be difficult, but it is.
Right.
There is in our law, in our legal framework right now. So they have to consider that the legal sphere of the gestational carrier is also affected. For example, if she's passed away, the inheritance process will be affected because there will be a child recognized
Right.
with the rights.
That needs to be dealt with, who is in another country, who makes it very difficult for notice and everything else. Yeah.
Yes. So this is this act of recognizing a baby just for live in Mexico in 1 or 2 weeks. Uh,
Meaning you
will
get to leave Mexico sooner. And that's a good thing to bring up too, why people are doing this. It's not just agencies saving money, but also because people want to get out of the country faster.
Exactly.
Right.
But I, well, I'm sure that if you explain to the families the legal consequence that all parties involved will have for doing this, they will think twice their decision, and
If
they
they
can.
had their own independent legal attorney to tell them this, they would make a good decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And specialize as well, because there's a lot of uh, um, I've seen also lawyers that are specialized in commercial law, and they want to, and they think that this is easy, and this is I don't know.
We see this all over the world where people think they can do surrogacy and they have no idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the same level of importance that the families consider to their medical team, they also have to give to the legal team the same level of importance.
Right. So I think one of the important things is to say there are companies, agencies in Mexico who are following all of these rules. We talk about all this negative stuff because there are companies not doing it, but there are ones that are doing all of these steps. Making sure that you meet your surrogate, that you have independent legal counsel, that the surrogate is paid fairly, that
Transparency. It's the program. Is transparent. I mean, the
right.
compensations that the intended parents will pay to the gestation carrier are clear and are in the agency will promote that these compensations will be established in the contract, not underground.
Right. Well, and that they're following the Amparo process, meaning they're removing the surrogate from the birth certificate and not leaving her on there. On a side note, even though we're talking about good and bad companies, I have heard a rumor that there is an attorney that has started to be able to get orders in Mexico pre-birth for removal of the surrogate. Are you starting to see that yourself, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yay.
Yes, because this is, to be honest, this trial it's so technical, and it's a difficult trial, but it's not impossible, because when we file a claim during the pregnancy, um, our vision is to protect first the gestational carrier, because in our law there is a contradiction. For one side we have the presumption of maternity, but in the other side we have an exception to the presumption of maternity, and the exception is applicable when you prove before the authorities that the baby born through surrogacy. What is the problem? That the law doesn't tell us how to prove that the baby born through surrogacy, and that the lack of a procedural law make us create a conflict.
Right.
So our vision in the pre-birth trial will be to recognize the social situation and the origin of the pregnancy and the future baby, to make sure that the presumption of maternity will be inapplicable to the
Ahead of
gestational.
time. Right. So you're making sure that right when the birth happens, it doesn't apply. Okay.
Exactly. And the purpose is to taking advantage of the exception to the presumption of maternity, and considering that she's not the mother, and the court will recognize the parentage based on the procreational will that they expressed formally in the surrogacy contract. And if that is possible, if we can get a pre-birth ruling, we need only to wait until the birth happens to enforce that ruling. And in that way, we can protect the baby sooner. Yes,
I
faster.
love it. Wonderful.
Yes.
So
And it's not just sorry. I was there's a lot of obstacles to get this pre-birth ruling. Not in all cases is possible because of usually this trial lasts 6 months, and we are running against the time of the pregnancy.
yeah. Okay. So it's not a given yet that you can do this. It's just you're starting to test it.
Exactly. No, we already have a successful cases
okay.
where we and we got several pre-birth rulings. But what I'm saying is that not in all cases is possible, and the reasons may vary from case to case. One reason could be because the baby born premature and we didn't have enough time to get to finish the process. The another reason could be because they were on a strike in the court, or because I don't know, the workload of the court is interfering to in the process, or I don't know. I mean, the reasons may vary from case to case, but if the court is diligent and they know that the baby will born and this baby deserve to be protected since the birth, probably we can get this pre-birth ruling and then get the birth certificate 2 or 3 weeks after the birth. But this will be the best case scenario for all families, but not in all cases is possible.
Right. Okay. I didn't want to ignore because I think I've talked about this in other podcasts about Mexico and the Supreme Court decisions, but the fact that you had yet another Supreme Court decision about surrogacy is unbelievable. I mean, we don't have a single one, so it's fascinating to me. But what I wanted to bring up was just because you talked about that criminal part of it, about your Supreme Court decisions say that it's a human right to be able to pursue surrogacy, and that's part of what protects everybody, and it's a right for both international and Mexican citizens who are in Mexico. So, but do you have any other cases going right now? I was surprised to hear another one, but with the Supreme Court?
No, with the Supreme Court, no. And the case that I mentioned before is not mine. It was a case from the other law firm, but the thing is, now the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court will resolve the way of resolving these type of processes. So even I mentioned at the beginning that we don't have a procedural law, and what the court will resolve now is what is the way to to protect all parties, because this is a social reality and we cannot deny it. And
Well,
this
you've been hoping for regulations, for statutes, procedural law, but that hasn't happened. So I guess if you can't make it happen that way, you're going to have to make it through court cases, right? One at a time. Yeah. But, in some ways, it's when I talk to people about Mexico and Mexico as an option, your Supreme Court cases are what make me feel good about Mexico. I would do anything for those decisions. They're amazing. They're well written.
Yes, I feel proud as well, because it's to consider that the procreational intention is a main element to determine filiation, open the door and give to these families the possibility of having a family in a new way. And so this is great. So people that even people that receive an embryo donation will be able to be recognized as a parents of your baby, because the intention these families are building by love, not by genetic, and the court recognized that.
Right. And if you're a U.S. citizen, do not use an embryo donation. I know you have just yeah. But for Mexican citizens and for a few other countries. Okay. So one last thing to talk about with Mexico, I think, just in looking at companies, there's still good and not so good areas of Mexico to be doing surrogacy in, right?
Yes. Well, could you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm talking about the parts of your country. So Mexico City, we know there's lots of good surrogacy happening there. You've got good judges. You're able to do what you need to do there, but there's still areas of Mexico that aren't preferable, right?
Yes. Well, my practice is focused in Mexico City, and of course, I know that in Tabasco, in Sinaloa, they are doing surrogacy, in fact, in the whole country.
The whole country, yeah.
But the thing is, mm, the reason of avoiding those states, for me, it's more for security reasons, more than
Okay.
The way of resolving these cases.
This is the Supreme Court case to apply, right? Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And yes, because what the intended parents should know is a Mexican baby will have a birth certificate. There's no options to be left without a birth certificate. There's no option. So for me, it's not relevant if the baby born in Tijuana or born in Mexico City or in Tabasco or in Cancun. The point here, we will have a Mexican baby and the court will protect it. But here is surrogacy is more than having a birth certificate.
Right.
And the court now is considering the elements that will protect the parties of suffering exploitation, abuse, because the bad practices could take us to that way.
Right.
And the court will consider that in the whole country. But, well, the best rulings that I've seen are from Mexico City. But, well, this is because my main practice is here.
Right.
But
right. Okay. Good information. I appreciate it. Is there anything else about Mexico you want to tell everybody before we're done?
Well, Mexico City has, or Mexico in general, has a lot of rights that not all countries have, as a recognized diversity. And it seems so natural and common, but it's not common.
Yeah.
So I think that diversity recognize that families are having problems to build their family, and to recognize as a human right the fact of taking advantage of the technology progress is not is something that makes Mexico a good destiny to pursue surrogacy. But you have to, if you are considering to doing surrogacy here, you have to make a due diligence before deciding your team.
Right.
And your team should be an agency, the legal team, the medical team, the psychologist, the social worker, the nutritionist, the embryologist, the gynecologist. I mean, you need to decide who will help you to build your family with responsibility
Right.
and ability.
All right, my friend, if people want to get a hold of you and talk to you, or have you assist them with their legal needs in Mexico for surrogacy, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, you can send me an email to Sofia arroba yes, 𝐒𝐮𝐫𝐫𝐢𝐨𝐝.com, and my webpage is 𝐒𝐮𝐫𝐲.com.
Okay. And we'll make sure we include all that information in our posts when we put out the podcast. So thank you. I appreciate you, and stick to it. You're one of the most innovative people I know in Mexico, and I think you're an amazing lawyer. Keep at it. I recommend anybody who's pursuing surrogacy in Mexico or just thinking about it to hire Sofia just to have those initial conversations. You need to understand the legal and understand what you're getting into before you get too far or you end up with a company you shouldn't be with. But thank you for joining us on this episode of Surrogacy Warrior. I hope you found it enlightening and empowering and that you enjoyed the show. Please make sure you like us and follow us. Your feedback helps us with additional shows. So if you have ideas and you want us to cover it on the podcast, make sure you let me know. You can stay connected to us at lawyersforfamilies.com for more resources and updates. But for now, remember, you're not alone in this journey. Together we are warriors. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting your dreams.
You've been tuning into the Surrogacy Warrior podcast with your host, Kimberly Surratt. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, lawyersforfamilies.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.